Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, September the 25th, 2023. I remember my first job. Well, it wasn't really much of a job. I worked at this place for about 3 weeks. It was a light industrial unit that I was working in, and I sort of did it during summer holidays. I was 17. And the work wasn't particularly hard. It was just putting things together, if I remember rightly. I learned a lesson. I did something really sort of embarrassing, something that really one shouldn't do. So I was trying to, I think, maybe get a screw in or a bolt, and I needed a spanner or something. I can't remember precisely what. And so I went to one of the workers' benches, and I just saw a spanner or whatever I needed, and I took it and I started using it. And then the man whose bench it was took me to task. He said, you know, this is something you don't do. You ask permission. And I still feel embarrassed about this. I mean, that was a really stupid thing to do. But I suppose I was 17. But I still feel that it was, you know, I should have known better. Anyway, this man's we'll call him Frank. Actually, that wasn't his name, but I somehow feel I shouldn't tell you his actual name or the name that everyone called him by. And so he was probably about 60 years old, I guess, and he was always immaculately turned out. He would wear his blue boiler suit, and he would, I think, invariably wear a tie under his boiler suit, and he was sort of well spoken, he was a veteran, and he was a veteran, and he, I think he kind of thought he was a bit better than the other people working there, and he had a German accent, and he explained to me how he learnt English. He learnt English through with a dictionary, and that's how he said he did it. Anyway, he thought he did have a view that he was a bit above the other people working there, but then they didn't take him as seriously as he felt he deserved to be taken. But I mean, I think he thought maybe because he thought I was intellectually a cut above the other people working there. I'm not saying I am. I think that was just his perception. You know, he would say things. Well, you know, maybe he'd say to me things like, "Well, maybe you understand these things, but these other people don't." And anyway, he was a veteran. And he said that during the Second World War, he was an SS officer. That's what he said. I mean, I have no idea whether that was true. I took his word for it. I didn't ask to see any tattoo which would have shown his blood group. You know, every SS man was supposed to have a tattoo with the blood group. I should have, in retrospect, asked him to check his story. He said that, you know, if Germany had won the war and had beaten Britain, it would have been fine. It would not have been a problem at all. And he was quite open about this. He didn't hide it. He told everyone, you know, in the factory, and that this is what he did. And he said, it wouldn't have been a problem if Germany had won the war. Okay, Bomber Harris. Now, Bomber Harris was the British air marshal or whatever, who was responsible for the bombing of German towns. He said, he would have been hanged or shot. I think he said hanged, I can't remember. And Churchill would have been shot. But apart from that, it would have been fine. It kind of fits. He was about 60. It was 1979. The age fits. He was German. Why not? I mean, SS officers, they go somewhere, don't they? This kind of illustrates the point that former members of the SS can get everywhere. They can get all sorts of places. They can even get to Canada. And so we have got, we have this situation last Friday where the speaker, I believe, Anthony Rota of the in the Parliament, in Canadian Parliament, he introduced an SS veteran, a veteran of the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS, or the 1st Galician Regiment, and they all applauded. And he used the words, I think he said, he is a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. For his service. So this man who was in the 1st Galician Regiment, in basically the Ukrainian SS. Now that is that's pretty serious. The Galician Regiment is responsible for numerous atrocities. Poles. During the Slovak National Uprising in 1944, the Galician SS was used to put it down. Apparently there's some historical group or body in Bratislava in Slovakia that has recorded 9 instances of atrocities by the Ukrainian SS. There are atrocities in Slovenia, and so it's not a nice organization. And you thanking him for his service? What service did the Galician Regiment do? They were used against partisans, but they were responsible for numerous atrocities in Europe. So that is really extraordinary. But what I want to do is consider the astrology of the situation. And so let's look at some charts. I want to look at the chart of the SS Galician Regiment, because it was formed, I believe, on April the 28th, 1943. Just as a bit of background, by April 1943, Germany was starting to lose the war, so they needed more people, more troops, and the SS started to recruit people from all kinds of nationalities. I think there was even a British SS. I think it was called the Legion of St. George, and there's a bit of a controversy about whether there are actually any members of the British SS. I think it might even have been an American SS. There were just SSs everywhere, and there was certainly an SS from Ukraine. So that's one chart. So while we're at it, I want to look at the chart of Heinrich Himmler, because I've wanted to look at the chart of Heinrich Himmler for a long time, because Heinrich Himmler has quite an interesting chart, and there is this enigma of Heinrich Himmler's Jupiter. I also wanted to look at the chart for that moment when the Canadian Parliament, all of them, gave this SS veteran, standing applause. There were sort of whoops of celebration, really celebrating him. I looked at the video, all of them. Now, I don't know what that says about Canadian parliamentarians. I mean, are they ignorant? Did they know what they were doing? Some basic level of history would have told them that this was incredibly inappropriate. And I know that the speaker, Anthony Rota, has taken all responsibility for it. But, I don't think that's really good enough. But so, I want to look at the chart for the moment they started applauding him. I kind of worked it out there was a news report, and I looked at the YouTube video and the timestamps, and I think I found a time for that. I want to also look at the chart of Canada's Deputy Prime Minister, because what's her name? Chrystia Freeland, because her mother is from Ukraine. And I just think that's kind of interesting. And of course, I'll be looking at the chart of Justin Trudeau. So, number of charts to look at. So let's start off with the horoscope of the Galician Regiment. So here we go. So April the 28th, 1943. I mean, I've Googled it, looked at a number of sources. This is a date that keeps coming up. If I got it wrong, my apologies, but I mean, I have no idea what time it was established. It doesn't really matter. So it doesn't really matter. The house cusps don't matter. I've set it for Lviv in Ukraine, but really it wouldn't matter because I don't have a time of birth. So yeah, so this is a chart for the formation of the Galician, the SS, the Galician Regiment, the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. So straight away we see a Mars-Saturn square. There's Mars in Pisces square Saturn. So Mars square Saturn, it's the death pair. In the context of an SS unit, that's what it's about. This is a unit that no one should be proud of being a member of, and this reflects what they were doing. The atrocities they were committing, they were used for anti-partisan activities. But it wasn't. I'm sure it wasn't. Well, not just partisans that got killed. There were numerous atrocities. So we see that with the Mars-Saturn square. So that's the first point about this chart. We can also see Neptune. Now Neptune is at 2945 Virgo. So Neptune is on the Aries point. Well, Neptune on the Aries point, I suppose there's a sort of hint of fantasy there, the sort of delusion of fighting for an independent Ukraine. Really? Well, you can't really fight for an independent Ukraine if you're fighting for the SS, because you're fighting for Germany. But I suppose that's what they were doing. And one should never forget that, of course, the Second World War and all the atrocities in the Second World War, that yes, the Germans committed were primarily responsible for what happened in Europe. I know one says it's the Nazis, but it's the Germans. Remember, the Germans elected the Nazis in 1933, so one shouldn't just use the Nazis to say it's a kind of diminished responsibility of Germany for it. Yeah, this was the Germans that were responsible. That were responsible, and yeah. So Neptune is the fantasy that maybe the Nazis were the Germans were sort of pushing onto Ukrainians, that they were somehow fighting for their independence. But really, they were just fighting against Russia, and of course, in a way, Ukraine in the Second World War was just being used as a battering ram against Russia, in a way similarly to what's happening now with NATO using Ukraine as a way to undermine Russia. Now, this Neptune is on quite an important midpoint. So let me just show you what that midpoint is. It's not immediately apparent, but if we use if I use the hypothetical planets, Witte's hypothetical planets, there's Hades. Hades at 21 degrees 34 Aries. There's Mars at 8:17 Pisces. So we see Neptune and Aries are on the Mars-Hades midpoint. And, I think this says so much about the Galician Regiment. Let me read you what Witte and his colleagues say about the Mars-Hades midpoint. Remember, Hades is a planet of the underside of life. So that's what Hades is about. Mars is, of course, a general planet of violence and aggression. So, in general, the Mars Hades midpoint is described as such: fatigue, weariness, atrocity, vulgar acts to cause damage, base services. Yeah, base services. That sounds good. Male servants, slaves, sudden attacks, murder, homicide, unusual deaths, serious sickness, faulty or bad actions. And then that's what the Mars Hades midpoint in general means. And if we put Aries on the Mars Hades midpoint, would be actions under aggravating circumstances, serious misfortunes, fatal crimes. And then Neptune on the Mars Hades midpoint, well, it talks about cheated out of earnings, unusual death by poison gases, murder by drowning or through treachery, death by poison. But we get the general idea of what the SS Galicia chart is all about. We've got the Mars-Saturn square, and we've got Neptune and Aries, and the Aries point on the Mars Hades midpoint. Also, notice Venus-Saturn conjunction in Gemini. I think Venus-Saturn conjunction in Gemini, you could see that as being, complete disregard for human life, being utterly merciless. Venus can be about compassion, about relating to people, and ordinary human emotions, and Saturn is conjunct Venus. So that tells us a bit more about the SS Galicia Regiment. That's their general approach. That's it. That's the SS Galicia Regiment. Now, the head of the SS, the guy in charge of the SS, and I just want to look at his chart because I've wanted to have an opportunity to look at his chart for some time, was, of course, Heinrich Himmler. Heinrich Himmler, born on October the 7th, 1900, at 3:30 p.m. in Munich. Now, the enigma of Heinrich Himmler is his Jupiter. This has been pointed out by other astrologers before, and it's really weird. He's got Jupiter in Sagittarius, conjunct the midheaven in a daytime chart. Heinrich Himmler has an absolutely fantastic Jupiter. It's just as good as it gets. It is on the fixed star Antares, which may make him somewhat arrogant. But yeah, it's really good. And I suppose there are a number of ways of looking at it. You could say, well, Jupiter is very moral. He has a set of principles. Jupiter often does. But from what we know about Himmler, I think he was a bit of a chancer. He'd do whatever. He followed the Nazi Party line. Obviously, it was very much part of him until right at the end. But he was quite happy to try and do deals with the British when the whole thing started to collapse. He was trying to work out ways to save his skin right at the end. That strong Jupiter might just simply suggest that we're dealing with someone who was a fairly mediocre person, but that Jupiter gave him a huge amount of luck that enabled him, at the age, he was 44 when he committed suicide. He got to I think he was 44. He hadn't reached even his 45th birthday. So he got to the heights. He was one of the most powerful people, well, arguably in the world, certainly in Germany. He wasn't very bright. He wasn't stupid, but he wasn't an exceptional person. Yet he got right to the heights. So that might be his Jupiter his Jupiter on the midheaven. And that's that Jupiter conjunct Uranus on the midheaven. So I suppose Jupiter conjunct Uranus is lucky. He's just lucky, right place at the right time. And that's how he got to be where he got to be. Also in his horoscope, we have an exact Saturn-Neptune opposition. Saturn at 29 Sagittarius, Neptune at 29 Gemini. Now, this may be about his attempts to bring his fantasies down to reality. I mean, I think Himmler was quite into the occult and Vikings and runes and all that, all of that kind of North European mysticism, sort of anti-Christian mysticism, and he was into all of that. And maybe that would explain it. And he has this T-square Saturn-Neptune opposition with the moon in Aries on the T. But I mean, I think that Saturn-Neptune opposition that Himmler had is obviously important. Yeah, I mean, I suppose trying to bring his fantasies down to reality through the SS and through, all that runic symbolism that you associate with the SS, and of course the anti-Christianity of the SS. So that's Heinrich Himmler's chart. But I mean, do remember that Saturn-Neptune opposition. Saturn in Gemini, Saturn in Sagittarius, Neptune in Gemini. So now what I want to do is I want to look at this moment when they all started to applaud an SS veteran, a veteran of the first Galician Regiment. So here is here's the chart. I mean, I think I got it right. I looked at the video. I looked at the clocks on the wall in the Parliament building. What else did I do? I looked at a newspaper article which said when Zelensky started speaking. So remember, what was going on is that Zelensky went to Ottawa. He made this speech before the Canadian Parliament, and having made this speech, the speaker, Anthony Rota, started talking about this SS veteran. So this was I suppose a catastrophe for Canada, and in a way a catastrophe for Ukraine, because it's become a big scandal now, and I think everyone is talking about it. It's not just the fringes. I think it's made people aware about Ukraine's really nasty past during the Second World War. So I made it 2:07 p.m. when this applause and the whooping was going on, when they were applauding the veteran. Yeah, just remember what the speaker said. He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Completely amazing. So we can see Mars is on the midheaven. Mars in Libra is on the midheaven, and I think that kind of tells us about it. Here you are, Mars, celebrating a soldier. In Libra, Mars is a soldier in his detriment, and Mars is on the south node. When you've got a south node, Mars south node, you've got a reputational issue here. This is a soldier with a negative reputation. You don't have a good reputation for being a member of the Galician SS. That's your Mars on the south node, and it's on the midheaven. And the south node can represent the past, sort of going back to the past, celebrating someone's service in the past, but it's south node. It's not service anyone should be proud of. So that's Mars Mars conjunct south node on the midheaven. Also, you've got the moon. You've got the sun is at 29 Virgo, just about to go into Libra, and it's square the moon. It's square the moon in Sagittarius. And you've got Neptune involved here as well. You've got Sun opposition Neptune, Moon square Neptune. So real confusion there. I don't know, these Canadian parliamentarians, they all seem to be showing. I can't believe it. I thought parliamentarians were supposed to be intelligent people. I thought they were supposed to have some understanding of history, but the uniformity of them was stunning. I mean, does this mean that people are forgetting the past, or are they choosing to forget the past? I don't know. But as far as this T-square is concerned, now let's just quickly go back to Heinrich Himmler's chart. Heinrich Himmler has his Saturn at 29 Sagittarius, Neptune at 29 Gemini, Moon at 0 degrees Aries. So if we go back to the applause chart, we can see this Sun, Moon, Neptune. It kind of links up with Himmler's chart. Let me just show you what I mean there, because I think this is so inside we'll put Heinrich Himmler's chart in the. Okay, so this is the chart of when they're applauding the SS veteran, and this on the outside is Himmler's chart, and there's Himmler's Saturn, there's Himmler's Neptune, and you can see that Himmler's T-square is being configured by this Sun square Moon and Neptune. So in a way, the planets at the time of the applause are almost aligning with Himmler's chart. You should worry about that, I'll tell you in a moment why one should worry about that. And it's aligning with another chart. So if we go, remember the chart of the SS Galicia. So let's just go back to the SS Galicia chart. I mentioned the fact that Neptune is on the Mars, Hades has disappeared, on the Mars Hades midpoint. Neptune is on the Aries point, and then at the time of their applauding, there's the Sun up there. The Sun is conjunct Neptune of the SS Galicia Regiment. Okay, that in itself might not be a big deal, but it's also the Sun for the applause is on the Mars Hades midpoint of the SS Galicia Regiment. So that Sun is and by square the Moon. That Sun Moon square is bringing out that energy of the SS Galicia Regiment, which was around, when it was formed on April 28th, 1943. So what I'm kind of suggesting is that there's some weird act of magic going on here. I mean, unconscious or not. And we can see this with Trudeau's chart as well. If you look at Justin Trudeau's chart, Justin Trudeau has his Mars at 29 Pisces, which is opposition the Sun, which is opposition the Neptune of the SS Galicia Regiment of April 28th, 1943. So it's like the lineup between this applause and the connection between them, all applauding, and then you look at the link between that and the horoscope of the SS Galicia Regiment, and you look at the horoscope of the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler. It all seems to come together at this moment of applause, and you've even got the president of the Ukrainian president is there. So it's like that moment in the Ottawa Parliament was like an act of black magic, some sort of ceremony. And at the climax of that ceremony, they're applauding an SS veteran and thanking him for his service. And so in a way, it's an act of magic to bring something back to life. It's helping to bring something back to life. So all of that, all of the evil that was around in the mid-40s, 1943, 44, it's all coming up again. And it's happening in Canada. Why Canada? I don't know. It reminds me of that book. I can't remember. I can't remember what it was called. It was a German book about Hitler coming to life in modern Berlin. What would happen? And it's almost like this at some spiritual, symbolic level is trying to bring something back to life. We thought that it was all gone, and then it's all coming together in Canada. And I want to look at one last chart, is the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. I don't really want to say anything particularly interesting or useful about her, but Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia Freeland is the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. I assume she was there when they applauded this SS veteran. I mean, she would have wanted to be here. Her mother. So Chrystia Freeland's mother is Ukrainian. She is a major advocate for NATO's proxy war against Russia. Major supporter of Ukraine. She's a complete expert on Ukraine. She speaks fluent Ukrainian, as far as I know, and she would have known. She would have known what was going on, what the significance of supporting this veteran is concerned. And I mean, that makes it kind of even more sinister. I don't know, as far as her chart is concerned, I don't have her time of birth, but she's got Moon in Scorpio. It's a pretty nasty chart, actually. Moon in Scorpio, probably trine Mars in Cancer. Someone who perhaps doesn't forget, and is, Mars in Cancer is maybe you're trying to continue with some ancestral slight. She comes over, she's got Ukrainian ancestors and got an ancestral grudge against Russia, and Sun in Leo. Obviously, she's a woman who probably has a very high opinion of herself. That Moon in Scorpio conjunct Neptune is pretty nasty, and a very intelligent woman, but no air in her chart. Very intelligent people with no air in their charts, they're like steamrollers. They just don't stop. They just have one idea and they just keep going. She is completely focused on this, and what's scary is how close she is to becoming to being Prime Minister of Canada. Yeah, she's the Deputy Prime Minister. Anyway, this is all extremely disturbing. But the only positive thing to say is I think we can see it's come out. I think the whole world can see what about Ukraine's past. We can see what is motivating people, and that how people in the West are completely blind to the reality of Ukraine and its history. So that's all I want to say for today. I hope you found that interesting, and I will talk to you again very soon.